Hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first reading for the Journal of Radical Wonders. We're really excited about this. And today we're going to start with somebody who I have long admired, which is Connie Post. We're going to be also on the Journal publishing her work, and I have her first poem up today, but we'll have several poems up over the next couple of weeks. So, and I absolutely recommend her, as I recommend her book, which is absolutely just it just blows me away. It's one of these books that you've got to read, and then I needed to take a nap and then read again and come back to it. It's just really, really powerful and dealing with powerful issues. I'm going to start by reading her bio, and then we'll have her read, and then the open mic after that. So Connie Post served as the first poet laureate of Livermore, California. Her work appeared in Calyx, Cutthroat Magazine, Comstock Review, River Styx, the American Journal of Poetry, Spoon River Poetry Review, and Verse Daily. Her awards include the Lyakura Award, is that correct? Okay. The Seijuro Award and the Crab Creek Review Poetry Award. Her first full-length book, Floodwater, won the Lyrebird Award. Her second full-length collection, Prime Meridian, was named a distinguished favorite in the Independent Press Awards. Her most recent collection, Between Twilight, was published by New York Quarterly Books in February of 2023. Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Diane Seuss says, "This honest voice, this exiled voice, comes through in poems that strike me as prayer. They seek mercy, not so much from a deity, but from the world, and most significantly from herself." All right, so Connie.
Oh, thank you, John. I appreciate that so much, and I appreciate your wonderful introduction. Oh, can everybody who's not muted just make sure they're muted, please? I also wanted to say that John and I have this interesting kind of connection. So he was the poet laureate of Kings County and what?
Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park.
And so I was the poet laureate of Livermore, but I keep this list for the state of California of all the poet laureates. And so we ended up connecting that way. And then he also wrote a review for my second full-length Prime Meridian. So we have a really nice connection. I've grown very fond of him over time. So I was very thrilled to be asked to do this. So thank you so much. And just to show the cover again from a distance, because I love this cover. People ask about it. Actually, I got it from one of those normal free image websites. And I went through thousands of images, and this one over and over and came back to me. So I'm glad it worked out, because all of us who had books, we have cover anxiety. Is it the right book? Is it not going to be the right cover? Does it say what I want it to say? So you'll notice in some of the poems, my poems, there's a lot of celestial and some content warning. There's some trauma in it, not in the beginning anyway. And so I'm going to set the tone just with the title poem called Between Twilight. And there is a lot of introspection in the poems about what's in between. I'm trying to find the spaces of what's in between. Between Twilight. Let's start with destruction, the decomposed bones and walls collapsing after a strong wind. Then go back to how it was before wholeness, before meteors fell like rain, before shadows understood their thirst for light, before our bodies became capsules for sorrow, before you and I had a name and the nebulae and galaxies accepted me just as I was, broken, celestial, waiting for a small portal in the world, waiting for a place to enter a womb that needed an opening, a place for the dust of stars to reconfigure themselves as me. You know how they always say, we're essentially stardust. This one is called Directions, and it was written before we had Google Maps and things on our phone where you actually had to print the instructions and put them on the passenger seat. Directions. I follow the written directions beside me on the passenger seat. I find the house by reading the names of each street. Off the main thoroughfare, I take 2 lefts, 1 slight right. It says if I pass the stop sign, I've gone too far. Weeks pass, and soon I know how to get there by instinct. Weeks become years. I no longer look at the signs, instead listen to my favorite radio station and turn each corner without a single thought. The way I turn into you at night, the street lamps blur to skin, the cul-de-sac of your curved back, the curb of your hip bones, and my skin warming, coasting into yours. This next one, I'll read a couple about my husband, who we've been married 22 years. And this one's called Fusion. He was a football player in college, so he has like so much metal in him from all his surgeries, but this was his first big surgery in his neck. Fusion. They will take out the bad disc, clamp the space between. The bones will be one, your spinal cord finally protected. There will be no way to measure the fallout, the inventoried items they will take from the body. They will make last-minute decisions when they get in there. There was no talk of how you bent your head to kiss me on our first date, how it was all fluid then, each moment held apart by measured spaces. 3 days after you're home from the hospital, I think of those two vertebrae, once separate, now fused, slowly getting to know one another, the surfaces absolving one another, as if there was anything left to forgive. Then this one was about, he also had a retinal detachment. He had like 6 surgeries to make that better. Between us, 2, because I've even had more surgeries than him. We have like 20 surgeries between us. The doctors are going to give us the 2-for-1 discount pretty soon. Retinal tear. The night before the operation, you go to the piano in the dark and play soft melodies with your eyes closed. You tell me you need to know that if you lost your sight, you could still play. The notes drop from the keyboard to the floor inside the cupboards and beneath the bed. I pick up each one, hold them in my hands, and take them back to you, but I am too late. You are already asleep. I stand over you and make sure you are breathing steady and the lamp is off. Our room fades to shadow of its former self. In the weeks that follow, I hear you after midnight playing those same incandescent chords, each one escaping like a refugee in the dark. I have a bunch of body poems about our bodies take on everything, our emotions, the world, our environment. I have a number of medical problems, and a couple of them are autoimmune. So this one is called autoimmune. One part of the body turns against the other, reacts as if an enemy has invaded. The war against friendly fire goes on for years, possibly decades. One doctor after another gives pills in doses unrecognizable to my broken mouth. Late at night, you read one medical article after another, trying to understand why the armed forces attacked a sovereign place in the body. You toss and turn, the siege goes on. You sleep, you love, you banish yourself from your own bed. You watch yourself line up words inside your mind, a small army encroaching from afar. I think autoimmune diseases are very, very incredible, the way they find a way to overattack your body. This one's called Bound to Repeat It. All the little silent things that happen in our body that kind of go unrecognized. There are atrocities in the body, millions of skin cells sloughing off every moment. We start by losing our amniotic lives, leaving the placenta behind, falling into and out of this oxygenated existence. We exile ourselves from the connective tissue of our worn selves. We turn away from the genocide of blocked arteries. Our voices fall out of us into 1,000 shallow rooms. We brush our teeth at night, scraping away enamel as if it will return. We turn the bed down, lose another strand of hair, never notice the mass graves beneath our skin. We purge ourselves of all light. When the day is over, we forget our names. When we sleep, enter the mitosis of dreams. We ignore the bones thinning, never recognizing how small colonies of tissue are lost without a sound. This one's called Estrangement, and I was estranged from my family of origin for a long time. I read a statistic that at any given time in the United States, somebody is estranged from their family at 27%. And that might change over time, but it's usually siblings or parents, that kind of thing. Estrangement. It's not like it happens suddenly. You step off a curb, agree to take a little time away. Maybe take a trip to another city. You look out the window of the bus as the streets pass by. A few weeks go by, a small building collapses. Then it's months and a road buckles and the signs reroute you to a small town. A metal bridge always in the distance. You are not sure you can cross it again. You live in your house made of clay and sin. Every day the river runs higher to the underside of the bridge, and soon 20 years of silence has passed. You watch a burning city from far away and notice a pigeon flying towards you, gaining speed, pulling the sky's edges with it, finally landing, carrying its message to an unmarked grave. And then reunification is its own kind of thing. This one's called The Wandering. The names of the street signs fade. The words blend together like children in a small hut. The lines in the road fall beneath the asphalt. You walk around looking for a familiar turn in the road, a place you used to watch the milkman drive by. You stare at strangers and they look right through you. Your skin is already translucent. You swore to yourself you would not spend too much time looking for the same spot on the sidewalk where you stepped on the crack to break your mother's back. You didn't truly want it to break, or maybe not all the way. Just wanted her to remember the endless years of ping pong battles beating you to the floor, the spine that never healed. At night, when you are speechless, you wonder if a dying language can be saved. Trauma has a lot of effect on the body. This one's called Entwined. You know those, when we were kids, some of us would, tie the rope and go, swing out to over the pond, the river. Entwined. Your history is tied around your waist like a rope. You fling yourself over the water, but the tire swing beckons you back. You find a foothold, you don't find a foothold. It's always the same. The gravity, the incessant gravity pulling you. You land wherever the rope comes loose. You curse the murky water for hiding the tadpoles with the broken tails, the moss that smothers your thoughts. Nobody on the far edge of the lake sees you. You go under and you become the body of water you once hated. You are alone, you are not alone, you are the hue of an unseen self. The water surrounds you like the selective mutism you had in second grade. The photosynthesis keeps you holy while you wait. Thank you. And then this one's called All My Wounds Are Self-Inflicted. The burn marks on my brain were born of self-loathing. My bones are calcified from dilapidated memories. My fingers' nails are cut down to the quick. I bind my legs with a particular length of rope. I practice how to breathe through self-persecution. It doesn't hurt anymore. Anyone can wash their body in a lather of scorn that numbs the skin. I used to swear a blue streak on purpose because I knew my dad would beat me first, and my smaller bone sister would be protected, instead be sent to her room. I counted the bruises the next day and was proud that I never cried. I could go to school and tell everyone I fell off my bike and tell everyone how much it didn't hurt. I was very numbed out to pain for many years, and then when it came, it was like a freight train. When I unnumbed is good for a lot of reasons, but it also is very painful. This is poems. There's some content warning in the next 2 or 3 poems called The Lie. When I was in second grade, I told a girl on the playground that I lived in the hills surrounding our town. I told her I lived with the wild animals and I slept under a tree each night. For decades, I never understood why I told that lie. For decades, I forgot her name. Now, when I think about my father and his shadowy exits and entrances into my room, I think I was trying to tell her about claws and teeth and the sound of growling that comes from behind a tree. I was trying to tell her that I understood the sound of brush rustling in the distance and how a small girl figures out how to hide in abandoned caves, learns how to stay still so not a creature can hear you breathe. These days, I scatter blessings and dry leaves among the mourning wolves. And mourning is M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. This one's called Citadel. It's kind of like a conversation with your body. Citadel, this is not your body. It does not belong to you. It is not the one that left the sallow rooms of home circa 1980, never to return. This is not the body who entered the hallway of a college dormitory and knew not a soul, who carried English books like a soldier carries ammunition. This is not the body that left the same college town pregnant with a son, with a man you knew would someday leave. This is not the body who gave birth and bid farewell to a womb who carried 2 babies. This is not the body who falls into anesthesia and counts the stitches like shame. This is not the body you return to each murky dusk. This is the body you were told to smite. This is the body you hid inside. This is the body you cradled. This is the body that knows the sound of a belt removed before a beating. This is the body that knows how to leave like a song rising from nothing, like music leaving a cathedral. This one, there's a beautiful river in Washington State called the Chehalis River, which as a child, my dad took us to fish for sturgeon. I know that most people, a lot of people anyway, have all these great fish stories with their dad or grandfather. And I kind of always take the fish stories are a negative. We're associative beings, of course. So my association with the fish and the rivers is not so much happy. River call. You took your boat out on the Chehalis River and caught sturgeon with your brother who was dying of pancreatic cancer. I think of you, Father, holding up the prehistoric looking fish, your hand in its mouth, and that half smile, half sneer. After twilight, you took us inside the cabin, put aside your cores, and cut the meat from the bone and sawed through the coarse skin. You spoke to me through gritted teeth. You told me that soon the waters would be too heavily fished and there would be too few sturgeon. You told me your own father used to take you fishing before 5 a.m. after a beating the night before. For years after you climbed out of our bunk beds, you left at dawn with a car full of whiskey and drove to that dark lake near our home, searching for your ancient self as if the fish were still hiding from you in that deep, sandy bottom. The last time I tried to read this poem called When I Was 8th grade, I teared up a little, so hopefully I can brave through it. When I was in 8th grade, I kept a list of everyone I hated at school in my diary. Occasionally, if someone was nice to me, I'd cross off their name. In winter, I discovered that my mother went through my diary and she told me I've never seen a child with so much hate, and she shook her head and walked away. At home, I often beat up my older sisters. I hid in my bunk bed and cut the eyes out of my dolls. She had such a bad temper, they would say in other rooms, but I didn't understand it either. My father loved me so much he couldn't leave me alone. So much that I was sequestered in the slanted rooms where all the doors disappeared. Sometimes when I kicked holes in the walls, my father would patch them up for me. I merely had to hand him the spackle and he would smooth it all away. I can no longer find those old diaries. I have no lists, just a box in the garage with some loose blank pages and a doll I never named. I still have that doll. She's a reminder of my survivorhood. I'm going to read a couple of poems about a woman in my life named Rita. I had a boyfriend who then became my husband when I was 17 or 18, and she became like my real mother, the mother I always needed. And she passed, and she was the most amazing human being I've ever known. And she took care of me in every way. And the first poem is called Bent Sky. It's maybe a year or so after she died. And that was the time where we had the eclipse. Bent Sky. I watched the eclipse from your gravesite, but I watched it from the wrong angle. Remember the one we saw in 1991, I asked. I told you I missed you. I told you the baby turned 3 and the house hasn't sold yet. But the grass wasn't listening and I couldn't think of anything else to say. So I pulled out my special glasses. Isn't it beautiful, I said, and you nodded yes from behind the sun. I only looked once. It's what you would have wanted. The rest of the day, I spent my time meandering around the yard, pondering the distortions of a bent sky, thinking about the moon turning black. I was the executor of her estate. So there's this whole thing where you don't grieve when you're like, have this whole other job being the executor. And when you sell the house, there's a finality to it that brings up a lot of emotions. This one's called Dwelling. And she had a beautiful little house up in the country. The money for the house sale landed in your bank account today. I saw the dollar figure and thought only of a small yellow house down a long gravel road in Yuba County. I saved all your paintings and the portraits you did not finish. I saved all the letters your parents wrote to you in the 1950s. I don't visit your grave often enough. I trip over divots when the grass is wet and land face forward in places I'm not welcome. I've saved the last $7 from your wallet. It's the only part of your estate that has not been inventoried. I called the water company to cancel your account, and they told me the new family is already there. I see them washing their hands in your stainless steel sink. I see them opening the front door when the sun comes up. I see them stacking firewood for the long winter ahead. And then, interestingly enough, Rita died. And in the same month, my father, who I hadn't spoken to in 25 years, also died. And so obviously a lot of complicated emotions. A short one called Two Deaths. When the person you ran from and the person you ran to die in the same month, you spend your time examining the geology inside a broken mountain. You spend time setting up safe camps in the dark night, calling for someone to find you. You write help across the legible places of the sheared stone. You repel against the flat wall of yourself. You travel light, drop the heaviest gear down the steep cliff, and hope you remember how to find the next foothold. I think I have maybe 5 more minutes or so, John. Okay. I will preface this poem by saying my life is never boring, but my daughter, who told me she was pregnant 2 days before my hysterectomy, and that beautiful grandchild is Jake, and he's now 8. To my 26-year-old daughter, you were sitting in front of me 2 days before my hysterectomy, telling me you were having a baby in July, asking questions only the moon can answer. The wooden grain in the kitchen table runs in the same direction as the conversation. We sort through 1,000 ifs as the kitchen light flickers. I move a half-empty glass away from surgery instructions that tell me no food past 9, only a sip of water, no jewelry, no aspirin. I am telling myself I will be fine. All surgeons know how to remove items from the body. Tumors, blockages, hidden prophecies. I am bidding farewell to a knotted house of cells, ramshackle after years of being empty. But it was your first home, your first warm universe void of Saturn or satellites, where you held out your intricate hand and stepped into your first dance with gravity. You making your own constellations, you forming, emerging as celestial bodies do, quietly changing the galaxy as if to say, I'm here. So a lot of times in my dream states, I go to these, I always feel like I kind of time travel a little bit. Like once I dreamed, I was like a pterodactyl flying over Stonehenge, and I kind of let those places take you where they might. Arc of Evening. 1,000 moons fracture the sky. The Paleolithic timeline cracks like a concrete bridge after a catastrophic earthquake. The timeline reverses itself back to Cro-Magnon man, back to rock and stone and loneliness. Back before Neanderthal man made flint, before flint made fire, before Orion had a name. There were trees who hid smaller creatures. There were swamps and fields who find me when I'm alone, swimming in the ancient creases of dark. I toss and turn, take a pill to make me drift back. I use my opposable thumb to close the prescription bottle. I enter the twisted sheets as the medications take hold. I am immersed in the secret rituals of sleep from a tribe long ago. How a small child will cry out when she is falling, and the sound will travel across the worlds, across the rivers of mystery and shamanism, calling to me like a century that never saw itself burning. I'm going to close with one called Love and Anthropology. Any of us who have been in either class or in a doctor's office stares at the skeletons, and poets are like that. It's like, what's their story, right? Love and anthropology. Learn to love the skeletons, the ones standing in museums far from home, the ones from science class who stared at you from across the room while you dissected a frog soaked in formaldehyde. Love the intricate bones, the ones who prevail and reside in closets, the ones whose teeth are missing with the bones chipped in odd places. Pay homage to the ones found in tombs holding the stories of the ancient kings of civilizations. Rehearse a psalm for the bones found in a dry field of grass, the only way to tell a young girl's story missing for years. Speak to the spine, its eventual fracture. Play love songs in infinite dark rooms. Hold up your invariable hands of dust and satiate the earth as any lover would. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Connie. So this is going to be my reminder. Connie, you're gonna post where to buy it in a second.
You could either just go to my email and send me an email. We could arrange PayPal or whatever, or you could just go to the regular websites. Just the A word, Amazon, but there's also SPT. I'll post the small press distribution is one, but I'll post that in a minute.
That's great.
Yeah.
I would encourage everybody to buy it now, because I don't know about you, but I go to a reading and I hear the poet, and then I forget to buy the book.
Yeah.
So I'm just encouraging people to support her. And to put a review up on Amazon too, which is
That always helps. Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so and if anybody would like to write a review of her book for the Journal of Radical Wonder, I would love to have it. So I don't know if anybody's interested in that.
I would do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I'm going to write one too, but I'm not going to put it on there. I'm going to leave that open for Jane. Yeah. And so I just wanted to introduce the before we get to the open mic, the Journal of Radical Wonder, which I forgot to do at the start, but now I can do it now. And we're a small magazine on Medium, but because we're on Medium, we can do interesting things, and I would love your work. We have people who write columns for us. We have people who wanted Tom Thomas. We printed a poem a day for a full month. We can do all sorts of different things, or we could just we also do reprints. We have several of the editors here, including Kate, Ken, Jane, and Tiffany is coming in, and Stephanie does really interesting reviews for us as well, which I checked that out. They're reviews that only Stephanie could do, because she's got a brilliant and wide-ranging mind. So please, if you've got something you'd like to pitch, we're open for it. We're just starting once monthly. We're doing readings at this time, and it's the first Sunday of the month. Our next reader is going to be Dave Alcock, who's absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you've read his work, but he has this ability of catching moments between moments that kind of expand our entire world. We can see the rest of it, and it's absolutely brilliantly done. And after that, we're not sure, but on the third Sundays, we do craft talks. And our first craft talk is going to be with Jane Edberg and me. And we're going to talk about ekphrases, which but edom phrases as well, which is something that we just kind of made up. It's using art to talk about poetry as opposed to the other way around. Okay, editor peoples, am I missing anything? Looks like I'm getting the no signs. It looks like we're good. Okay, so we're going to start the open mic, and if you have
one sec, John. Sorry, I put the small press distribution website on the chat there. Thank you.
Absolutely, and if you click on it right now and you kind of listen to us as you're buying it, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. Okay, so we've got Cindy, Penelope, Robbie, Ken, Tiffany, and Kate, and the rules is 3 poems or 3 pages, whichever comes first. So okay, we're going to start with one of my favorite people in the world, Cindy Rennie.
Thank you. Lots of favorite people in my world are here. I just want to say, Connie, I love this book. I had a goal of reading it before today, and it was easily met. So I do suggest people get it, because I could hardly put it down.
Thank you, Cindy, so much.
And I just so admire your courage. And poetry so healing, right? It's a perfect place. So saying that, I selected poems I felt were in response to your book, tried to kind of tie it together. So we'll see. They're from Silence Between Drum Beats, Seeding a Different Future. Hummingbird drinks nearby, red and white salvia, not disturbed, but my presence while he pulls weeds. Okay, I'm gonna start again. It's early this morning and I was at an art walk last night in LA and I'm just okay. Seeding a different future. Hummingbird drinks nearby, red and white salvia not disturbed by my presence while he pulls weeds. The apricot tree sprouts leaves in one day. I pay homage to the fig, leaves already large enough to droop. Sun shines through to create shadows like pictographs. An unknown tree establishes and thin bracts stretch on the hillside. Result of a seed dropped by a bird? It's my beloved's birthday, one he will never forget. Only I can touch him. So this book was written during COVID times, and Connie didn't really read about that today, but I think you had references because it brought that to mind. Jellyfish. You glide and undulate in community. You create patterns in sunlight like flipped coins. Don't hurt one another. Transparent, nothing to hide. Once I feared your sting, now your movement brings calm. I am alone with the pain of trauma again. And my last one is actually an ekphrastic poem. But John, I do also write from my own artwork. So I've done the reverse. And I've written poems and created the artwork. Anyway, listening. After Corona Blues by Sharon Davis. Storyteller moon almost rises over granitic rocks covered in gneiss, born 100 million years ago. Pebbles rattle and shiver in the wind. She names those who die in this contagious death, difficult breath, across the Navajo Nation. Names lost from the reach of her light. Grieves a sad song as century plants of succulent gray-green leaves form a basal rosette with leaves tipped off a hard spine, pierced deeply and survive COVID-19. They bloom on the 40-foot stalk with hundreds of fragrant white blossoms in tight clusters. Storyteller listens to the flutter of moths on the flowers and sees me walk through the boulders. I am listening to my friend virtually read ancient stories that opened me to new ideas during the lockdown. I long to have conversations not on Zoom. After a month, the stalk thick as a tree, the flowers and the whole plant dies. Underground sprouts allow the ghosts of the plant to spread unseen to grow anew, but the death toll keeps rising from invisible droplets. I isolate in my home, longing to be around others with my cheetah mask, social distancing, and washed hands. Then love's all things moon awakens and softly sings sacred songs to the wind, moth, and stones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Cindy. And Penelope Moffat's book last year kind of came out of nowhere for me and just struck me dumb. I really loved it. So Penelope's up next.
Thank you, John. I really appreciated the review that you wrote. That was really great. I'm enjoying the poems this morning. Connie, I have not heard you read before, and it was a real pleasure to hear you. I was really moved by the poetry. I think my favorites were the ones about Rita, the woman who became your mother. And it started me thinking about how important mothers are. You need a mother, I think, early in your life, whether it's your biological mother or someone else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to have a biological mother who was extremely wonderful. And I'm going to read 3 poems for her. 2 of them were in the journal Radical Wonder last year. So I'm going to actually read this from the Word. Jacaranda. Jacaranda, my mother used to say each spring, when feathery leafed branches filled with bell-like flowers. Most people said it with a hard J and a short A, as if its intimates might call it Jack. A native of Brazil, brought here by those who love the purple haze it lifts against the sky, drops profusely on the ground. A tree everyone admires unless it's on their lawn. Jacaranda, Mom would say, honoring its origins, tilting back her head to drink its shifting color. And the second poem is called Hatchetfish. She'd be amused if she knew how long I stare at her dark fish. I think that I'm the pretty one with butter cheeks. It has the biggest mouth. The other drabber ghosts float behind, 3 masks like my 3 sisters. Knowledge glints in their deep eyes. Under protest, she took on the photo that I gave her, painted something so unlike her usual worlds of butterflies and flowers, forests, lakes, laughing faces, cats tumbling out of baskets. Instead of the small canvas I expected, she made it big, worked the image hard in classes at the senior center. Agnes, you've gone round the bend this time. Her fellow students shook their heads. Yes, she said, it's what my youngest wants. And the last one is called Unraveling. It was published at Postcard Poems when that magazine was around. Unraveling. She looked at me as though she was the child, and I, her youngest, had become her mom. I spooned the pureed food and she grew calm, thin bird mouthful by mouthful beguiled. What spell caused that reduction from the wild, vibrant woman she was when she was young, the one whose nimble wit both charmed and stung, enchanted into silent woods exile? Her eyes gazed at me defenseless, and I leaned away, unstrung by her wide stare, the elemental self almost laid bare. The life she lived before then was no lie, though she remembered little. What she wove unraveled in the wind of that dark world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Penelope. That was wonderful. We have Robbie up next, and kind of person who needs no introduction. She's absolutely fantastic poet.
Thank you. I've got 2 poems that were published in One Art. Miss Rabinowitz shows me the ropes. At 5, I could hardly wait to go to school with all the big kids in the neighborhood, to learn at last to write my name and climb the highest monkey bars. I thought school would be one big story time, like at the library. Kind teacher, smiling kids. When I first saw the teacher, Miss Rabinowitz, I was sure she was the one I dreamed about. She was beautiful, so tall, with a smile I had imagined, though it was painted on. Her hair was perfect, every strand lacquered in place, pearly smile serene as any swan. But anyone could tell you swans are mean. They beat you with their wings, stab at your face with strong beaks. Miss Rabinowitz played favorites. She frowned at boys, always dirty and unruly, rude, liked only the dimpled girls with shiny hair braided neatly into plaits, who sat demurely at their desks with ankles crossed below their rosy knees. Hands folded, they didn't ask, as I did, why the sun never shined at night, why worms came out after it rained, how flies walked on the ceiling. I was untidy and always broke my crayons, held the pencil all wrong in my left hand, socks unraveling around my ankles. Too short and sharp-eyed, I never would be ladylike in any way. One day in art class, she told us to draw a picture. I wanted to discover a new color, laid the crayon thick onto the paper till it tore, a waxy mess of an uncertain hue, like a fire smoldering in the basement. It could have been the time to show us color charts, explain how mixing shades creates new ones, or had us study photos of famous paintings where faces might be blue or green. But instead, she pursed her perfect lips, holding out my picture with the tips of painted fingers, and declared, "There is no such color. Is this supposed to be a tree? Trees are brown and green." I looked up at her flawless face and saw she hadn't seen the leaves in fall or touched the ashy bark of beech trees. I knew then that school would not be what I hoped, a sanctuary and a home. I would have to make my own. I got one more. This is called Dream It Right, and it's inspired by Rogue Dream by Melanie Fig, which was a prompt that Diane Lockwood gave in one of her monthly newsletters. I ride the city bus to my old high school. It's my first day at this school. But this time, my stomach isn't lurching like a Chevy with a bum transmission. No headache in the spot between my eyes. The school building, that black box, doesn't look like an ill omen, a cardboard carton inside of which a small child might fall asleep and be accidentally crushed by a delivery van taking a shortcut down the driveway. It's X, yet this time, maybe I can solve the problem. She enters the bathroom on the second floor. Those girls are there, the ones who threw her down the stairs outside the cafeteria every day at lunchtime. Their hair, teased high, glitters like spun sugar. Eyelids, the iridescent wings of butterflies. Spiky lashes, the insect's folded legs. They grip Virginia Slims in their long fingers, turn to look out of the window. It seems, despite the pain and pretense, they aren't the monsters she imagined. But I can't balance the equation. Never arrive at the cafeteria, still eating lunch in the bathroom on the second floor. Thank you.
All right. Next up is Kendall Johnson, who is one of our editors and a brilliant writer of trauma and other things as well. Ken, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? I've been messing around with a new form called quadrillor, and so I brought several of them. Each is 5 stanzas long. The first is the Mecca quadrillor. 1. Cabazon, California, on the summit of the San Gorgonio Pass, separates Inland Valley from Mojave Desert and is known for life-size cement dinosaur creationist church, a sea of wind turbines that could daunt Don Quixote, and a huge golden casino. From the 27th floor, you see the I-10 running off to the west towards Beaumont and LA and back to the east towards the Salton Sea. Bright lights, the bars, food stands, darkness lies beyond. 2. Salvador Dali paints St. Anthony. In the desert, sunburned down to one knee, holding tight to the cross that keeps him from temptations that float overhead. You wonder about lost families and friends, how one had died not far from here, how your children are now gone. You wonder about the things you've done and said that hurt, about things undone, all to hide you from your pain. You pray for something you might find here beyond this heat, baking. 3. Living strategic suicide, Cynthia hides in a convalescent care home 10 miles and 20 years northeast of Palm Springs. Avoiding doubt, discomfort, risk, or pain, the high cost of taking chance. In this carefully managed bardo, as well, are any possibilities of delight. With a few foods she lets herself like, butterscotch is probably the best. Cynthia's death hold on safety keeps her confined to her bed. Today, a gray something lunch patter sits by her window without her butterscotch. 4. Salt and sea, violent pink light of dawn. Offshore winds blow smell away, waves flatten, gulls silent. Distant people wander, no apparent direction. You think of the land art installation near the Coachella Festival, container-sized square, detached but reflecting its desert milieu, a giant wiping out. Salt foam and detritus glow sunrise silver yellow. You wonder how that huge cube would look floating 3 feet above the water. You see the rows of giant wind turbines beneath San Jacinto's distant peaks. 5. Jessica, a nurse's aide in Mecca, prattles on while tugging sheets and tucking corners around a patient's inert limbo. Jessica goes on about Tony, whom she loves and for whom she longs, and how he's asked her to run with him. Somewhere, he told her, far away, how he makes her laugh. The silent patient watches a lone Palo Verde tree outside the window struggle in the Palm Springs heat. With meager water from a rusted tap, it hasn't grown in years. Maybe you should consider it. The silent patient finally speaks, stopping the startled nurse. The second one comes from a set of work I'm trying to revisit New York, the 9/11 event in which I was present, and I've been trying to digest it ever since. And this is another quadrillor. 1. Armed soldiers guard roadblocks, blocking traffic downtown for hours. Dogs checking vehicles for bombs, soldiers and police verifying drivers' identification. Lines stretched for blocks. Goner smiles and talking, even the honking, the swearing and joking. Our eyes dart back and forth, watching. Heavy atmosphere defies breathing. The ammunition is live. 2. A school counselor tells of kids trying to get home, how ferry boats and private yachts pulled up to Battery Park and took kids to safety. Terrifying, he tells me. We couldn't keep the children there in the smoke and confusion, but we didn't know where they ended up, who had them. We were responsible, but everything and everyone was out of control. 3. Hospital X-ray tech tells me his job. Empty body bags onto a table, separate parts like piles, and X-raying to keep bodies more or less intact for burial. How they were so often commingled, inextricably tangled, that the outcome was only approximate. Who was together or apart? You forget what you're doing, he said. You learn not to feel. 4. A school principal. I led the procession out of the school. I'd been told to take them east following the emergency plan, but east was right into the fire and falling bodies. So much smoke and ash we couldn't see or hear. I tried to give orders by bullhorn, but they still couldn't hear me. So I pointed south, and that's where we went. 5. The doors to the fire station look covered with hand-drawn notes. Some thanks, some ask if anybody's seen their sister or mother. An engine emerges from its bay windows. Its siren blends with all the others. It heads down the middle of the street, blood red with yellow lights, disappearing through a canyon of dark buildings. Thank you.
Okay, next up is Tiffany, who's also an editor, and we love her work.
So the first one I'm going to read is actually the first piece in my upcoming collection. It's called Provoking Your Children to Wrath. I twist a helix upon myself, the crookedness smoothed into planes I can slide through. I read about the work of CRISPR geneticists in the news and wonder how much of me would be left if all traces of you were excised. Held in my palm, the way you held my leg, writhing against my grip as I against yours, breaking as you broke me. An eggshell pierced, bacteria a river twisting the yolk into green, shining on the banks outside our home. Is this what you meant when you told me I must honor, that God demanded my honor of you? I look through shrouded eyes, behold God's countenance. Sunlight can purify, but anyone who's taken basic biology can tell you it also corrupts. The next two pieces I'll read are about my grandfather's passing in a roundabout way, in some manner. So the first one's called 15 Minutes Late. Rain was pouring, unseasonable, calling to toad spawn asleep under cracked dirt when the phone call came in before noon under the rainfall spigot open to full. Spigot broken and emptying over the dried mud swamp. They found you unresponsive just before noon, the toad spawn spontaneously generating their tails for a half hour under the pour of the spigot, under the drenched windshield, rainfall laden with cracking and caked dirt, splash mixing on the highway. The toad spawn, their tails, their waterlogged proto-legs mixed into the mud under accident tires on the highway. The rainwater spigot flowing over the windshield, the tadpoles breathing waterlogged mud under the screeching tires. My car mud mixing unresponsive toad spawn into gravel under the spigot, the open emptying, the broken emptying when the accident screech wheeling over the mud swamp where tires ground tadpoles and their guts into mud things. the spigot flow, pooling around swimming toad spawn, breathing mud and gravel, breathing in the pour, breathing out the swimming, tadpoles breathing in their guts, the spigot open. I was open under the spigot funnel and the swimming toad spawn mud, and I was left open to full. And the third piece is called Climate Change. A sand crab crawls from the lapels of my grandfather's double-breasted suit across prayerful hands to the elbow and over silk lining his casket. From the edge, leaping onto seafoam carpet, another, then another, a wave of crustaceans crawling over the lectern, over the feet of the priest, into barrels of rifles ready for a 21-gun salute. A crab crawls into my throat. I choke on the sea, my words eaten one by one. The little crab growing. It clambers into my lung, tiny stick feet poking and burning like liquid in my chest, my airways full of the sea. I cough and nothing comes up, the way he coughed in the ER, the way he coughed while his lungs filled, the way he coughed when he told me the final secret. His loved ones crowd me, spit home remedies my way, ask if I have forgiven my father yet, if I know how ill anger will make me, as I try to swallow, try to cough, the ocean filling my thorax. Grandfather told me he knew about the abuse when I was 2, told me he was so sorry. He wished he had done something, said something. My heart pierced by an urchin's spiny body. Leaking seawater, I pull myself through the crowd, a swimmer against riptides, the crabs clawing my calves, my lungs burning. I grasp for air. I make my way to my mother who sees my struggle, and as always, she turns away.
So Hillary, I'm sorry. So Tiffany won the Hillary Gravendick Prize, and your book is coming out in about a year. Am I right? So great.
Yeah, my understanding is early 2024-ish.
Excellent. We will definitely have a reading for Tiffany when that comes out. So that's great. And we started off this evening with, or this morning evening, with Kate saying she wanted to go last because she was nervous. But I don't know why. Her work is just absolutely gorgeous and brilliant. So Kate.
Thank you, John. This actually is something I had not thought to read today, but it's an older piece that I'm reworking and it's not quite finished, but I wanted to have a sense of how it sounded. And Connie, when you read about the sturgeon, I grew up in Longview, Washington, and Chehalis and the river just right up the road. So familiar territory. And this comes from a trip I made up to the Pacific Northwest, Puget Sound, and visited a place I hadn't been to in 30 years, which was the Pike Place Market, which has changed. So this is called Pike Place Market, Seattle, August 2022. The market by the harbor hustles while the young fishmonger hawks his fish with a small sockeye carcass for bait. The monger holds the sockeye's mouth agape and passes through the crowd, mocking the fish's voice as if she is asking for the dollar bills that are stuffed on top of her tongue by the laughing crowd. With a whoop, the young man hurls the thing to another huckster behind the iced and glassed-in counter, calling out the price and weight of the fish's flesh, singing its praises. The rhythmic chant is echoed by the crowd who love the sport of tossing creatures before a sale, as the other fish, coho, king, and chinook, stare unseeing. That's it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I'm just going to call out Raymond. Raymond, would you like to read? Okay, he's gonna pass. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming. To this reading. We have one. We'll have one once a month. And I hope you make it to our craft talk in 2 weeks.
Can I
All right.
say thank you to everybody for being here? It was wonderful event, and thank you, John, so much for having me. I appreciate that so much. You lovely, lovely group. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
Yes,
We love it.
agreed. Yay.
Great to see everybody. Thank you as
Yeah.
always, John.